The chess piece hovered between Louisa's fingers, a queen poised above the board like a blade about to fall. Across from her, the Duke of Gravenmore leaned back in his chair with the lazy confidence of a man who'd never lost anything that mattered. "Checkmate in 4 moves," he said, his voice carrying just loud enough for the men gathered around their table to hear. "Unless, of course, you'd like to concede now and save yourself the embarrassment." Louisa's jaw tightened. Around them, the private club's wood-panelled walls seemed to close in, thick with cigar smoke and masculine certainty. She was the only woman allowed in this sanctum of privilege, and only because Lord Stirling's influence had carved out an exception. The men tolerated her presence the way they might tolerate an exotic pet, amusing until it bit. "I don't concede," she said simply, placing her queen with deliberate precision. The Duke's dark eyes flickered with something she couldn't name. Interest, perhaps, or irritation. His fingers drummed against the mahogany table, a restless rhythm that matched the pulse hammering in her throat. "Stubborn," he murmured. "I admire that. Though I wonder—" He moved his knight, cutting off her escape route. "If you realize the position you're in, Miss Marsh." The false name tasted like copper in her mouth. Eliza Marsh, daughter of Lady Whitmore's governess. A convenient fiction that allowed her to exist in this space without destroying her real life. Without disappointing her father, who expected his daughter to be everything proper society demanded: demure, accomplished in watercolors and pianoforte, silent in the company of men. Here she could be something else entirely. "I realize exactly where I am, Your Grace." She moved her bishop, opening a diagonal line of attack. "The question is whether you do." A ripple of murmurs circled the watching crowd. The Duke's mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close enough to be dangerous. Fascinating. He leaned forward, and she caught the scent of bergamot and something darker. "Tell me, Miss Marsh, if you win this match," his voice dropped to a purr, "what would you ask for?" "To be left alone to play chess in peace." How disappointingly practical. His rook swept across the board. "If you win this match, I'll marry you." The words landed like a slap. Several men laughed, the easy, dismissive sound of those who'd never been the punchline. Louisa's vision tunneled, her fingers white-knuckled against the edge of the table. "How generous," she said, acid dripping from each syllable. "To offer a prize I'd sooner feed to the ravens than accept." The Duke's eyes widened fractionally. Then that almost smile returned, sharper now. "Well then, I suppose you'll have to lose, won't you? For your own protection." "I don't lose." "Everyone loses eventually, Miss Marsh." He captured her knight with casual efficiency. "The trick is choosing when." 3 moves later, she proved him wrong. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. Lord Stirling's booming laugh cut through the noise, delighted and triumphant. Lady Cassandra, watching from her chair near the window, the only other woman permitted as Louisa's chaperone and sponsor, raised her teacup in silent salute. And the Duke of Gravenmore stared at the board as if it had personally betrayed him. "Impossible," someone muttered. "She got lucky," another voice dismissed. Louisa rose, smoothing her skirts with hands that wanted to shake but wouldn't. "Thank you for the game, Your Grace. Perhaps next time you'll remember not to underestimate your opponent." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Miss Marsh." She looked back. The Duke was standing now, tall enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet his eyes. In them she saw no anger, only that unsettling interest, burning brighter than before. "I always keep my promises," he said quietly, "even the foolish ones." "Then perhaps you should make fewer of them." She walked away before he could respond, before the trembling in her legs could betray her. Behind her she felt his gaze like a physical weight, following her across the room until she disappeared into the corridor beyond. In the safety of the shadows, Louisa finally allowed herself to breathe. She'd won, and somehow, she suspected, she'd just made everything infinitely more complicated. 4 years ago, Louisa Thorne had discovered 2 truths about herself. The first, she was very good at pretending. At home in her father's modest estate, she was the perfect daughter. She embroidered. She practiced scales on the pianoforte until her fingers cramped. She nodded at appropriate intervals during her father's lectures on propriety and duty, while inside her mind mapped chess strategies and calculated probabilities. The second truth, She was exceptional at chess. Lady Cassandra Whitmore had taught her. During that first summer, Louisa and her brother Oliver had come to stay at their aunt's fashionable London residence. Their father's sister had married well, and each summer she invited her niece and nephew to her townhouse for the season. A chance for connections, for advantageous matches, for climbing the precarious ladder of society. Louisa had hated every suffocating moment of it, until she'd met Lady Cassandra at a garden party, and the older woman had seen something in her eyes that made her extend an unexpected invitation. "So you look," Lady Cassandra had said, "like a woman dying of thirst at a very tedious well." She'd been right. Lady Cassandra was a widow with independent wealth, unconventional opinions, and a complete disregard for what society thought she should do with her life. She believed women deserved education, choice, and the freedom to be more than ornamental. The ton tolerated her because her money made her useful, but the men found her threatening. Louisa found her intoxicating. That first summer, Lady Cassandra had taught her chess. The second summer, she'd introduced her to Lord Geoffrey Sterling, a nobleman who'd been unsuccessfully courting Lady Cassandra for years and who shared her progressive views about women's capabilities. When he'd seen Louisa play, he'd proposed something audacious. "There's a tournament," he'd said. "Invitation only. The finest players in England. All men, of course, because apparently chess requires testicles." Lady Cassandra had laughed at that. "But I have influence. I could get you in." She'd be destroyed, Lady Cassandra had warned. Not at chess, she's brilliant, but socially. The moment her real name attached to this, her reputation would be gutted. Then we don't use her real name. And so Eliza Marsh had been born, the daughter of Lady Cassandra's governess, raised in the household, educated beyond her station. Not quite a servant, not quite a lady, existing in that grey space that made the story believable. The first time Louisa had entered that private club, her knees had shaken so badly she'd thought they might give out. The men had stared at her like she was a curiosity in a museum. She'd won her first match through sheer stubbornness and spite. After that, Lord Sterling's influence and her own careful cultivation of a humble, grateful persona had secured her place. She complimented her opponents extravagantly. She attributed her victories to luck. She smiled and deferred, and made herself as unthreatening as possible, except when she played. Then she was merciless. For 3 years this had worked. 3 years of summer tournaments, of feeling fully alive only when she sat before a chessboard, and her mind could finally run free. This year, everything had changed. This year, the Duke of Gravenmore had arrived. "You humiliated him," Lady Cassandra said later that evening, as they prepared for dinner in her guest quarters at the tournament estate. The tournament operated like a house party from hell. Players and sponsors stayed on Lord Carlisle's sprawling property for a week. Matches held throughout the day, formal dinners each evening where Louisa was expected to remain quiet and invisible. "He humiliated himself," Louisa corrected, fastening the clasp on her simple necklace. As Eliza Marsh, she couldn't wear anything too fine. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had access to her aunt's jewels, but here she had to dress like a governess's daughter. "I simply played chess. You destroyed him in 4 moves after he'd mocked you in front of half the club." Lady Cassandra's reflection smiled in the mirror. It was magnificent, but dangerous. "Why?" Louisa turned to face her mentor. "I've beaten dozens of men here. Why is he different?" "Because he's a duke, darling. Because he's young, handsome, and too intelligent for comfort. Because unlike the others, he doesn't look at you like you're a curiosity." Lady Cassandra's expression grew serious. "He looks at you like you're a puzzle he intends to solve." A chill traced Louisa's spine. She'd felt it too, that weight of the Duke's attention, the way his dark eyes had tracked her across the board with calculating precision. "I'll be careful," she promised. "Be more than careful. Be boring. Be the grateful little nobody they've allowed into their sacred space." Lady Cassandra touched her shoulder gently. "I know it galls you, but the moment they discover you're actually Louisa Thorne, daughter of a respectable family, playing chess under a false name—" "I know." Louisa's throat tightened. "My father would be devastated. Oliver would be furious. And my aunt would suffer the scandal by association. Not to mention you'd never play again. That was the real threat. Not social ruin, though that mattered, but the loss of this. The one place where her mind could breathe, where she was valued for her intelligence rather than her ability to simper and agree. "I'll be the perfect Eliza Marsh," Louisa said firmly. Grateful, humble, lucky. Lady Cassandra studied her for a long moment. "Just remember, darling, the best lies are temporary. Eventually the truth finds a way to surface. Then I'll enjoy the lie while it lasts." Dinner was a torturous affair of 7 courses and endless masculine pontificating. Louisa sat at the far end of the table, nearly invisible between 2 older gentlemen who'd long ago ceased acknowledging her existence. The Duke of Gravenmore sat at the center of power, commanding attention without effort. He was perhaps 32, dark-haired and broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that belonged on Roman coins, all sharp angles and aristocratic bones. When he laughed at something Lord Carlisle said, the sound carried down the table like a caress. Louisa focused determinedly on her soup. Miss Marsh. She looked up. Lord Stirling, bless him, was attempting to draw her into conversation. A kindness that usually backfired by making her more conspicuous. "Yes, my lord?" His Grace was just saying he's never seen someone employ the Rui Lopez opening quite so aggressively as you did this afternoon. I thought you might explain your strategy. Every eye at the table turned to her. Louisa's fingers tightened around her spoon. "I'm sure His Grace is being generous," she said carefully. "It was simply fortunate that—" "Don't." The Duke's voice cut across her deflection. "Don't diminish what you did. It was calculated, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. Own it." The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. "Your Grace," she said slowly, "I was raised to believe that excessive pride in one's accomplishments is unbecoming, and I was raised to believe that false modesty is a waste of everyone's time." His dark eyes held hers. "You're the finest player I've faced in years. Why pretend otherwise?" "Because pretending keeps me safe," she thought. "Because the moment I show my teeth, they'll remember I'm not supposed to be here at all." "Perhaps," Lord Carlisle interjected, his tone jovial but pointed, "we should remember that Miss Marsh's presence here is itself an unusual circumstance. We wouldn't want her to become overconfident." The threat was delicate but clear. Louisa dropped her gaze to her plate. "Of course, my lord, forgive me." From the corner of her eye she saw the Duke's jaw tighten, but he said nothing more, and the conversation moved on to hunting and politics and other topics from which she was tacitly excluded. Later, when the men retired for brandy and cigars, while she and Lady Cassandra were dismissed to the drawing-room, Louisa felt the familiar cage closing around her throat. "That was well done," Lady Cassandra murmured as they settled into chairs near the window. "You swallowed your pride beautifully." "It tasted like ash. Pride often does, darling. But it keeps us alive." Through the window, Louisa could see the torch-lit gardens, the shadows of men moving through them with their drinks and their easy confidence. She wondered what it felt like to occupy space without apology, to speak without calculating every word's weight. The Duke's words echoed in her mind. Own it. If only she could. The second day of the tournament dawned with rain drumming against the windows. Matches were delayed until afternoon, leaving the players restless and confined to the Manor's public rooms. Louisa had planned to hide in her quarters, but Lady Cassandra insisted she make an appearance in the library. You can't let them forget you exist, or they'll decide you shouldn't. So she found herself tucked into a corner with a book she wasn't reading, hyper-aware of every sound and movement around her. "Tolstoy," she jolted. The Duke stood beside her chair, seemingly materialized from thin air. Up close he was even more overwhelming, tall enough that she had to crane her neck back to see his face, and looking at her with that unnerving focus that made her feel simultaneously exposed and seen. "I'm sorry." He nodded at her book. "You're reading Tolstoy. In the original Russian, unless I'm mistaken." Damn. She'd grabbed it without thinking, too used to Lady Cassandra's library where she could read whatever she wanted. A governess's daughter wouldn't have access to— "Lady Whitmore has an extensive collection," she said quickly. "She's generous about lending books to her staff." Generous indeed. He moved closer, and she caught that scent again, bergamot and something like smoke. "Most governesses I've known can barely read English, let alone Russian literature." I was fortunate in my education. Evidently. He pulled a chair over and sat without invitation, close enough that she could see the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Tell me, Miss Marsh, what does a governess's daughter do when she's not humiliating dukes at chess? I don't... She stopped, regulated her breathing. I assist Lady Whitmore, I read. I play chess when the opportunity arises. And this opportunity arises every summer, for 3 years running? Her pulse kicked against her ribs. Lord Sterling has been kind enough to sponsor my participation. Sterling's kindness is legendary, almost as legendary as his decade-long pursuit of Lady Whitmore. The Duke's mouth curved. Tell me, does she ever put the poor bastard out of his misery? I wouldn't presume to speculate about Lady Whitmore's private affairs. Of course not. That would require opinions, and you're far too well behaved for those. He leaned back, studying her. Except at the chessboard. There you have opinions, strong ones, devastating ones. Chess is different. Is it? Or is chess the only place you're allowed to be honest? The observation landed like a knife between her ribs. She forced herself to meet his eyes, to keep her expression neutral. Your Grace, I'm not sure what you're implying. I'm implying that you're not who you claim to be. His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. I'm implying that everything about you, the way you move, the way you speak, your education, your posture, suggests a woman born to a very different life than serving as companion to a governess's charge. Her blood ran cold. That's absurd. Is it? He reached out, and for one heart-stopping moment she thought he might touch her. Instead, his fingers hovered above her wrist, pointing. You're wearing a ring. Simple gold band, but old. Quality craftsmanship. Family heirloom, I'd wager. Odd thing for a governess's daughter to possess. She'd forgotten about the ring. Her grandmother's ring, worn so constantly, she no longer noticed its weight. It was my mother's, she said, which was true. She died when I was young. I'm sorry. And he sounded it, genuine sympathy softening his features. But it doesn't explain why you're here. Why a woman with your obvious intelligence and education would be content to exist in the margins, pretending to be less than she is. Perhaps I'm exactly what I appear to be, and you're seeing complexity where there's only simplicity. No, he said it with absolute certainty. I'm an excellent judge of character, Miss Marsh, and you are many things, but simple isn't one of them. She should leave, should excuse herself and retreat to safety. But something in his tone, not mockery, not threat, but genuine curiosity, kept her rooted. Why does it matter to you? She asked quietly. Because I've never met anyone quite like you. He said it simply, without artifice. Because you beat me at chess and made it look effortless. Because you're wasting your gifts playing for the amusement of men who can't even appreciate what they're witnessing. He paused. And because when I offered to marry you yesterday, you looked at me like I'd offered you a pile of manure. Despite everything, she felt her lips twitch. You mocked me in front of a room full of men. What reaction did you expect? Fair point. He grinned, a real smile this time, devastating in its warmth. In my defense, I was trying to unsettle you. You were winning far too easily. Perhaps you should simply play better, Your Grace. The words were out before she could stop them, sharp and clever and entirely un-Eliza Marsh-like. The Duke's eyes lit up with something fierce and delighted. There she is, he murmured, the woman underneath all that careful politeness. Hello. Her cheeks flamed. I should go. Why, because you forgot to be boring for 30 seconds? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Stay. Talk to me. Just for a moment. Be whoever you actually are. I don't know what you mean. Liar. The single word hung between them, not an accusation, but an observation. An invitation. Louisa's hands twisted in her lap. Every instinct screamed danger. This man saw too much, asked too many questions, made her want to abandon every careful protection she'd built. But God, it was tempting. To speak freely, just once. To match wits with someone who wouldn't expect her to dim her light. One conversation, she heard herself say, and you stop investigating my supposed secrets. Deal. His smile was wicked. Though I reserve the right to draw my own conclusions. You'll draw them regardless. True. But now at least you'll have some influence over the evidence I collect. Despite herself, she laughed. It escaped before she could trap it, genuine and unguarded. The Duke's expression shifted, something raw and hungry flashing across his features before he controlled it. "That," he said softly, "is the first real sound I've heard you make. Do it again. I don't perform on command, Your Grace." "Julian," he said it firmly, "if we're going to have honest conversation, let's start with names." "That would be inappropriate. Miss Marsh, you're sitting alone in a library with a notorious bachelor duke, allowing him to interrogate you about your mysteries. We've already crossed inappropriate. Might as well enjoy the view from here." He had a point. And there was something intoxicating about this, the verbal sparring, the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting thing in the room. Dangerous. So dangerous. "Julian, then," she said, testing the name on her tongue. "Though only here. In public. In public, you'll call me Your Grace, and I'll pretend not to notice the way your eyes roll when I say something you find idiotic." He shifted his chair closer. "Tell me about chess. How did you learn?" Safe territory. She could talk about chess without revealing too much. "Lady Whitmore taught me. She's exceptional. I've heard. Sterling won't shut up about her brilliance. It's actually rather sweet, watching a grown man turn into a lovesick puppy." He paused. "She taught you and you surpassed her?" "I wouldn't say—" "Don't." He cut her off gently. "Remember, no false modesty in this conversation." Louisa exhaled slowly. "Yes, I surpassed her. Within 2 years I could beat her almost every time. She says I see the board like a battlefield, 3 moves ahead, calculating probabilities, anticipating responses. You do. I watched you yesterday. Your eyes," he gestured vaguely, "they go distant when you're calculating, like you're seeing something the rest of us are blind to. Chess is logic, patterns. If you understand the patterns, the moves become inevitable. Life doesn't work that way." "No," she agreed quietly. "Life is far more complicated." "Is that why you prefer chess? Because it makes sense?" The question pierced something tender. She looked away, focusing on the rain-streaked windows. "I prefer chess because it's the only place where my intelligence is an asset instead of a liability, where being clever is celebrated instead of suspicious, where I can win and it matters." The confession hung between them, more honest than she'd intended. Julian was quiet for a long moment. "That's desperately sad," he said finally. "That's reality. Maybe, but it doesn't have to be." He reached out, and this time his fingers did brush her wrist. The lightest touch, there and gone. "You're brilliant, Miss Marsh. Whoever you really are, whatever circumstances brought you here, you're extraordinary. And the fact that you have to hide that to exist in this world is an indictment of everyone who made the rules." Something in her chest cracked open. She stared at him. This duke who'd mocked her yesterday and was now saying the most dangerous things. Dangerous because they made her want to believe them. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you need to hear it." His expression was serious, almost fierce. "Because in 2 days I've watched you make yourself smaller to accommodate the egos of lesser men, and because—" He stopped, jaw working. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since you wiped the floor with me yesterday, and I'd very much like to know who you are when you're not pretending." Her breath caught. This was a mistake. A terrible, beautiful mistake. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't be that person here. Too much is at risk." "Then be her with me. Just in these moments, let me see you." It was the wrong thing to say, and exactly the right thing. Louisa felt the walls she'd carefully constructed begin to tremble. "One conversation," she heard herself repeat. "Just this once." His smile was soft, almost reverent. Just this once. But they both knew it was a lie. That evening, Louisa played against a pompous viscount who talked throughout the entire match about his supposed strategies, while consistently making obvious mistakes. She beat him in 20 moves, complimented his creative approach, and escaped before he could corner her for another lecture. She was halfway across the club's main hall when she heard the crash. The sound came from the refreshment area, glass shattering, a man's strangled cry. Louisa spun toward the noise, her heart lurching. Lord Rothmore was on the floor convulsing. His face had gone an alarming shade of purple, foam flecking his lips. Around him, men stood frozen in shock. "Someone get a doctor!" Lord Stirling's voice cut through the paralysis. He dropped to his knees beside the stricken man, trying to hold him still. Lady Cassandra appeared at Louisa's elbow, face pale. Dear God. The doctor arrived within minutes. Lord Carlisle kept one on staff during the tournament. He examined Rothmore quickly, his expression grave. "Poison," he announced. "Someone poisoned this man." The room erupted in chaos. Accusations flew. Men backed away from the refreshment table as if it might explode. Lord Carlisle called for order, his face mottled with rage. "How? When? Who would dare—" "The wine," the doctor said, pointing to an overturned glass near where Rothmore had fallen. "It's the only thing he consumed." Louisa's stomach dropped. She looked at the glass, cut crystal distinctive pattern, the same pattern as the glass she'd been served earlier that evening, the same glass she hadn't drunk from yet. She must have made a sound, because suddenly Julian was beside her, his hand gripping her elbow. "That was meant for you," he said quietly, his voice hard as granite. "That was your glass. You can't know that. I do know that. I watched the servant pour your wine and set it on that table before you finished your match. Rothmore must have taken it by mistake." Horror washed through her. Someone had tried to poison her. Someone in this room wanted her gone badly enough to kill. "Why?" Her voice came out thin. "I've done nothing. You've beaten half the men here. You've made fools of their pride." Julian's grip tightened, almost painful. "And someone decided you'd embarrassed them one too many times." Lord Stirling pushed through the crowd, Lady Cassandra close behind. His face was thunderous. "Miss Marsh." "Your Grace." He looked between them, jaw clenched. "We need to speak privately now." They adjourned to a small parlour off the main hall. Lord Rothmore had been carried away, still breathing but barely. The doctor thought he might survive. The dose hadn't been quite enough to kill a man of his size, but it would have been more than enough for Louisa. "This ends now," Lord Stirling said flatly. "Miss Marsh, you're withdrawing from the tournament. It's not safe." "No." The word escaped before she could think. "I won't be driven out by some coward who can't accept losing. You nearly died tonight." "But I didn't. And if I leave now, they win. Whoever did this, they get exactly what they wanted." "Better they win than you die." Lady Cassandra's voice was sharp with fear. "Louisa, be reasonable." She'd used her real name. In the stress of the moment, the fiction had cracked. Julian's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. "I'm being perfectly reasonable," Louisa insisted. "I'm the best player here. I've earned my place. I won't be scared away." "Then what do you propose?" Lord Stirling demanded. "We can't have you drinking or eating anything without certainty it's safe. We can't protect you from someone we can't identify." Silence fell. Louisa's mind raced, calculating options. There had to be a way to stay safe and continue playing. There had to be. "I'll protect her." All eyes turned to Julian. He stood with his arms crossed, expression set in lines of absolute determination. "You, Your Grace." Lord Stirling's skepticism was evident. "Yes, me." Julian looked at Louisa, something fierce burning in his dark eyes. "I'll be her shadow for the remainder of the tournament. I'll taste everything she eats or drinks. I'll escort her everywhere. And anyone who wants to try again will have to go through a duke first, which even the stupidest coward might think twice about." "That's ridiculous," Louisa protested. "You came here to play chess, not babysit me." "I can do both, and frankly, keeping you alive is more important than winning matches." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Why would you do this? You barely know me." His jaw worked. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Because you're the most interesting person I've met in years. Because watching you play chess is the closest thing to witnessing art I've ever experienced. Because you're brilliant and brave, and you deserve to be here." He paused, holding her gaze. "And because the thought of you being hurt makes me want to burn this place to the ground." The raw honesty in his voice stole her breath. Lady Cassandra and Lord Stirling exchanged significant looks. "Well," Lady Cassandra said slowly, "that's certainly protective." "This is highly irregular," Lord Stirling added, but he didn't sound entirely opposed. The two of you spending constant time together, it will cause talk. Let them talk, Julian said flatly. Miss Marsh's life is more valuable than propriety. Louisa should refuse, should recognize this for what it was, dangerous, complicated, potentially disastrous for her carefully maintained fiction. But someone had tried to kill her tonight. And Julian was offering her a chance to stay, to keep playing, to not let fear win. On one condition, she heard herself say, you let me teach you, really teach you, not just play. I'll show you the strategies I use, the patterns I see, in exchange for your protection. His eyes lit up. Deal. Though that seems weighted in my favor, I get to spend extensive time with you and improve my chess game simultaneously. I'm sure you'll find other ways to suffer, she said dryly. I'll do my best. His smile was wicked. So, shall we start now? Someone just tried to poison you. Seems like a good time for a private chess lesson where I can ensure your safety. Despite everything, the fear, the shock, the shaking in her hands, Louisa laughed. She was in so much trouble. They set up a board in Lady Cassandra's private sitting room, away from curious eyes. Julian insisted on preparing the tea himself, checking every cup and saucer for tampering. Paranoid, Louisa observed. Careful, he corrected, settling into the chair across from her. There's a difference. The chess pieces stood between them like soldiers awaiting orders. Louisa arranged them with automatic precision, her mind still whirling from the evening's events. Who do you think did it? She asked quietly. Someone with access to the refreshment area. Someone who knew which glass was yours. Julian's expression darkened. Someone who's lost to you and can't stomach the humiliation. That could be half the men here. Exactly, which is why we need to be smart about this. He moved a pawn forward. We investigate while you play. Watch for reactions, inconsistencies. Someone will slip. You sound like you've done this before. I haven't. But I'm very good at reading people. He gestured to the board. Your move. And while we play, tell me about your family. She froze. Why? Because I want to know you. Because we're going to be spending significant time together, and I'd like to understand who I'm protecting. His eyes found hers. Because Lady Whitmore called you Louisa earlier, and that's not the name you gave me. There it was, the secret, partially exposed. Louisa's hands trembled as she moved her knight. I can't tell you everything. Then tell me what you can. His voice was gentle. I won't betray your confidence. Whatever you're hiding, whatever circumstances brought you here, it's safe with me. She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. My real name is Louisa Thorne, she said quietly, the words feeling like stepping off a cliff. I'm not Lady Whitmore's governess's daughter. I'm the daughter of a country gentleman. Respectable family, modest means. Every summer my brother and I stay with our aunt in London for the season. Julian processed this, his expression unreadable. And your father doesn't know about the chess. He'd be horrified. He expects me to make an advantageous match, to be the kind of daughter who brings honor to the family name, not, she gestured at the board, this. Being brilliant at chess dishonors him? Being anything but ornamental dishonors him. The bitterness leaked through despite her control. I'm supposed to watercolor, play simple tunes, agree with whatever men say, and gracefully accept whatever future he arranges for me. That sounds like a special kind of hell. It is. She captured one of his pawns. Lady Cassandra showed me there could be another way, that women could have minds, opinions, freedom. Lord Stirling got me into the tournament, and for 3 summers I've had these weeks where I could be do more. So you created Eliza Marsh. A necessary fiction. The daughter of a governess has less to lose than the daughter of a gentleman. And if anyone discovered my real identity, your reputation would be destroyed. Your family would suffer the scandal. Your father would lock you away from anything resembling freedom. Julian's voice had gone cold with fury. And these bastards who claim to value honor would ruin you for being too intelligent. Yes. The single word held years of frustration, fear, resentment. They played in silence for several moves. Julian's strategy had improved. He was learning to think 3 steps ahead to anticipate her responses. Good. She liked opponents who challenged her. Louisa, he said finally, may I call you that? when we're alone. The intimacy of it made her pulse race. If you must. I must. He captured her bishop, a small victory. And you should know. I don't care about your father's expectations. I don't care about society's rules regarding what women should or shouldn't be able to do. I care that you're here, you're extraordinary, and someone tried to hurt you tonight. Why does that matter to you? She asked again. Really? You could have walked away. Let Lord Sterling handle this. Why volunteer to be my constant shadow? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because yesterday you looked at me like I was a problem to be solved. Not a title, not a prize, just an opponent standing between you and victory. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Everyone I meet sees Duke first, Julian distant second. I see both, she admitted. The Duke is powerful, confident, used to winning. Julian is curious, clever, and doesn't like losing. She moved her queen. Check. He smiled, studying the board. And which do you prefer? Julian. The Duke is useful for protection, but Julian is the one I'm teaching chess to. Good answer. He countered her check, but she'd already seen the trap. So, we've established you're hiding your identity. I'm protecting you from would-be poisoners, and we're both pretending this is solely about chess instruction. What else would it be about? Louisa. He said her name like a prayer and a curse. You're not stupid. You know exactly what this is about. Her throat went dry. I don't. You beat me at chess, and I couldn't stop thinking about you. You gave me that razor-sharp response yesterday, and I wanted to hear every thought in that brilliant mind. You spoke honestly to me this afternoon, and I... He stopped, jaw clenched. I haven't felt this intrigued by another person in years, possibly ever. You're attracted to me because I'm a challenge, she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Once you solve the puzzle, the interest will fade. Is that what you think? It's what I know. Men like you, powerful men, men with options, you want what resists you. The moment I become easy, available, understood, I'm no longer interesting. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with that unsettling intensity. You have a low opinion of my character. I have a realistic opinion of human nature. Then let me be unrealistic for a moment. He reached across the board, and before she could stop him, his fingers covered hers. I'm attracted to you because you're brilliant, because you speak your mind when you feel safe, because you play chess like you're conducting a symphony, and watching you think is the most compelling thing I've ever witnessed. His touch burned. She should pull away. Should remember every rule she'd set for herself about keeping distance, staying safe, protecting her heart. This can't go anywhere, she whispered. Even if there's something here, it can't become anything. You're a duke. I'm nobody. You're Louisa Thorne, the finest chess player in England, and that makes you somebody to me. Julian, I'm not asking for forever. I'm not asking you to give up your freedom or your chess or anything you value. His thumb traced the back of her hand, devastating in its gentleness. I'm asking for this week, for honest conversations and chess lessons, and time where we both stop pretending. Everything in her screamed danger. This man saw too much, made her want too much. If she let him in even a little, she'd only make the inevitable ending more painful. But God, she was tired of being careful, tired of swallowing every true thing she wanted to say. 1 week, she heard herself agree. We investigate who tried to poison me. You protect me during the tournament. I teach you chess, and when this is over, we go back to our lives. No strings, no expectations, no promises. His eyes held hers, dark and intense. Just this stolen time where we get to be fully ourselves. It was a terrible idea, potentially disastrous. She should say no. Checkmate, she said instead, moving her queen into final position. You were so distracted by words, you stopped watching the board. He laughed, surprised, delighted, genuine. You're going to make me suffer for this, aren't you? Every moment. She stood, pulling her hand from his. Now, I believe we have some poisoning to investigate. Where do we start? His expression shifted, becoming sharp and focused. We start by figuring out who had access to that wine glass, and then... His smile turned predatory. We make them very, very sorry they ever crossed you. Louisa felt an answering smile curve her lips. Fierce and entirely unladylike, she was still in trouble. But now at least she had an ally. The next morning arrived grey and sullen, rain still pattering against the windows. Louisa found Julian waiting outside her door at an unconscionably early hour, looking disgustingly alert. "Did you sleep?" she asked, letting him into Lady Cassandra's sitting room. "Some. Did you?" "Not much." The truth was, she'd lain awake for hours, replaying their conversation, questioning every decision. "I kept thinking about the poison. Who would risk it? The scandal if they're caught. Suggest someone desperate, or arrogant enough to believe they won't be caught." He settled into a chair, producing a small notebook. "I've been making a list. 7 men have lost to you multiple times this tournament. 5 of them lost significant wagers on those matches. You think it's about money? Money, pride, or both. Men do stupid things when their egos are bruised and their purses are lighter." He flipped open the notebook. Lord Rothmore himself was on the list, but obviously he's eliminated as a suspect, given he's the one who ended up poisoned. "How is he?" "Alive, recovering slowly. The doctor says he'll likely survive, but it was near enough." Julian's expression hardened. "Which means whoever did this is either extremely lucky that their dose miscalculated or didn't actually intend to kill, just incapacitate. Scaring me away would be enough." "Exactly." He stood, moving to the window. Against the grey light, his profile was sharp as a blade. "Today's matches start at noon. Until then, I propose we do some investigating." "How?" "By being observant, watching reactions when we're together, seeing who seems nervous, guilty, or overly interested in your well-being." He turned back to her. "And by very publicly establishing that you have a Duke's protection. That alone might make our poisoner think twice about trying again. You want to make a spectacle of us. I want to make it clear that harming you means answering to me." His tone left no room for interpretation. "Is that acceptable?" It should horrify her, the attention, the speculation it would cause, but instead she felt something warm unfurl in her chest, protected, defended, seen, dangerous feelings. "Acceptable," she agreed, "though Lady Cassandra will have opinions about propriety." "Lady Cassandra," said the woman in question, sweeping into the room, "has opinions about survival overriding propriety. If His Grace wants to parade around as your guardian, I'm hardly going to object." She fixed Julian with a pointed look. "Though I will note that protecting someone and compromising them are dangerously close concepts, Your Grace. I have no intention of compromising Miss Thorne. See that you don't. She has enough challenges without adding ruined reputation to the list." Lady Cassandra poured herself tea. "Now, have you 2 brilliant strategists formed an actual plan, or are you just making eyes at each other?" Louisa's cheeks flamed. "We are not. Please. I'm old, not blind." Lady Cassandra's smile was knowing. "You, child, look at him like he's a particularly complex chess problem, and he looks at you like he's starving, and you're the only meal in sight. It's all very dramatic." Julian didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. "Lord Stirling said you have a talent for cutting through nonsense, among other talents. Speaking of which, Geoffrey and I have been making inquiries of our own." She settled into her chair with the air of someone about to share delicious gossip. "It seems your poisoner may have shown their hand in another way." "How?" Louisa leaned forward. 3 days ago, before the tournament began, someone was overheard in White's making rather vicious comments about women playing chess. Specifically, about how certain women needed to learn their place. The speaker was Lord Craven. You beat him twice last summer, Louisa. He lost £50 on the second match. Julian's expression went cold. "Craven. I should have thought of him. He's known for holding grudges." "There's more. Yesterday afternoon, around the time the wine was poured, several servants saw a gentleman matching Craven's description loitering near the refreshment area. He claimed he was looking for a specific vintage." Lady Cassandra's eyes glittered. "But no one recalls him actually taking any wine." "That's damning," Louisa breathed. "But not proof." "No, unfortunately not." Julian was already moving toward the door. "But it's enough to confront him carefully." "Confronting a suspected poisoner seems unwise," Louisa protested. "Not confronting, observing, applying pressure." He looked back at her, something fierce in his expression. "You have a match against Craven today, don't you?" She checked the schedule. At 2 o'clock. Perfect. I'll be there. Highly visible, making it very clear that any attempt to harm you will be met with immediate consequences. His smile was sharp. And we'll see how he reacts to having a witness who won't look away. The match against Lord Craven took place in the club's main hall, a dozen other games happening simultaneously around them. But their table drew a crowd. Word had spread about the poisoning, about the Duke's protection, about the scandalous woman who played like a master. Louisa felt their stares like weights on her skin. Lord Craven sat across from her, his expression carefully neutral. He was perhaps 45, still handsome in a dissolute way, with the kind of mouth that looked cruel even when smiling. "Miss Marsh," he said pleasantly. "Shall we begin?" Julian stood behind her chair, a silent but unmistakable presence. She'd protested the positioning, too obvious, too intimate, but he'd been immovable. "If Craven is our poisoner," he'd said, "I want him to know exactly what stands between him and trying again." Now, as they arranged their pieces, Louisa watched Craven's face for any sign of guilt or fear. Nothing. He looked bored, if anything. "Terrible business yesterday," Craven said, moving his first pawn. "Poor Rothmore. I hear he's expected to recover?" "The doctor believes so," Louisa countered with her opening, "though it was a near thing." "Indeed. Makes one wonder what kind of monster would poison a guest at a gentleman's tournament." His eyes flicked up to hers. "I hope you're being careful, Miss Marsh. Clearly someone in our midst has unsavory inclinations." The concern sounded genuine. Too genuine. "I'm well protected," she said quietly. "His Grace has been kind enough to ensure my safety." "How gallant." Craven's gaze shifted to Julian, something unreadable passing across his features. Though some might say a duke playing nursemaid to a governess's daughter is beneath his station. Behind her, Louisa felt Julian tense. She spoke before he could. "Some might say attempting murder is beneath any station. Yet here we are." The words hung in the air like smoke. Craven's hand paused over his knight. "Are you implying something, Miss Marsh?" "I'm observing that cowardice takes many forms, some more lethal than others." She moved her bishop. "Your turn, my lord." For just a moment fury flashed across his face, raw and undisguised. Then it vanished behind that bland mask. "You speak rather boldly for someone in your position." "And what position is that, alive, competent at chess? Both seem perfectly acceptable positions to me." A few spectators laughed. Craven's jaw tightened, but he made his move. Too aggressive, too hasty, emotional. They played in silence for several moves. Louisa could feel the tension radiating from Julian, coiled and ready to strike at any provocation. The crowd watched with breathless attention, sensing drama beyond the chessboard. "You've made quite a name for yourself," Craven said finally, his tone conversational. 3 years of victories, impressive for someone so young, so inexperienced." "Experience is relative," Louisa replied, capturing his knight. "I've found that intelligence and study often surpass years of mediocre practice." Another flash of anger, another hasty move. She had him, not just in the game, in his self-control. He was unraveling, showing her exactly what she needed to know. This was the man who'd tried to kill her. "Tell me," Julian said suddenly, his voice cutting through the tension. "Lord Craven, where were you yesterday evening? Around the time the wine was poured?" Craven's gaze snapped up to the Duke. "I beg your pardon?" "Simple question. Lady Whitmore mentioned seeing you near the refreshments. I wondered if you'd noticed anything suspicious." "I don't recall being near the refreshments at all." But his eye twitched, the smallest tell. "Strange. Multiple servants remember you there." Julian's tone remained pleasant, conversational, deadly. "Looking for a particular vintage," they said. "I may have been. I enjoy wine. It's hardly criminal." "Of course not, though poisoning someone certainly is." Julian leaned forward slightly. "If you noticed anything, anyone tampering with glasses, acting strangely, I'm sure you'd want to report it. Being a man of honor and all." The threat was delicate but unmistakable. Craven's knuckles whitened on the edge of the table. "I noticed nothing, and I resent the implication." "No implication, just gathering information." Julian straightened, his hand coming to rest on the back of Louisa's chair. a possessive gesture that made the crowd murmur. We all want to find the culprit, don't we? To ensure nothing like this happens again. Naturally, they finished the game in tense silence. Louisa won, easily, inevitably. Craven's anger had made him sloppy, predictable. When she declared checkmate, he stood so abruptly his chair scraped across the floor. Well played, Miss Marsh. His voice was tight. Perhaps next time you'll face a more worthy opponent. Perhaps next time you'll play without trying to murder your competition first, Louisa replied evenly. The crowd gasped. Craven went white, then red. You dare. I dare many things, my lord, including calling cowardice by its name. She stood, meeting his gaze without flinching. Good day. Julian's hand found her elbow, guiding her away before Craven could respond. Behind them the crowd erupted in whispers. That was reckless, Julian murmured as they walked. That was necessary. You saw his face. He's guilty. I saw his face. So did everyone else, which means he now knows we suspect him. They turned into a quiet corridor. He'll either retreat in fear or escalate out of desperation. Then we'll be ready for either. Julian pulled her into an alcove, his expression serious. Louisa, I need you to understand something. Men like Craven, when they're cornered, they become dangerous. You backed him into a corner in front of witnesses. His pride won't recover from that. Good. Let him suffer. I'm trying to keep you safe, and you're deliberately provoking the man who tried to kill you. I'm making it clear I won't be intimidated. She lifted her chin. Would you prefer I cower? I'd prefer you alive. His hands came up to frame her face, the touch sending electricity through her veins. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't take any unnecessary risks. I promise I won't drink or eat anything you haven't tested first. Beyond that, she shrugged. I came here to play chess, Julian. I won't stop living because someone wants me dead. He stared at her for a long moment, something fierce and frustrated burning in his eyes. Then, you're going to drive me absolutely mad, aren't you? Probably. She smiled despite everything. Consider it practice for your patience. My patience, he muttered, is not the problem. But he didn't let go of her face. His thumbs traced her cheekbones with devastating gentleness, and for a breathless moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, putting proper distance between them. Tonight, after dinner. Meet me in Lady Whitmore's sitting room. We need to plan our next move. Against Craven? Against whoever tries to hurt you next. His jaw set in hard lines, because now that he knows we're watching, he'll try something different. Something we won't anticipate. A chill traced Louisa's spine, but she refused to show fear. Then we'll anticipate everything, she said firmly. Come prepared for a long evening. I have several strategies to teach you. His expression shifted, humor breaking through the tension. I look forward to it. That night, Louisa found Julian already in the sitting room, a chessboard set up and a cold supper laid out. Every dish he'd prepared himself or watched being prepared. You didn't have to go to this trouble, she said, settling across from him. I told you I'm not taking chances. He pushed a plate toward her. Eat. You barely touched anything at dinner. I wasn't hungry. Liar. You were nervous about being in a room full of suspects. He speared a piece of chicken with his fork, ate it demonstratively. There, verified safe, now eat. She obeyed, discovering she was actually starving. They ate in companionable silence, the tension of the day slowly easing. Tell me about your brother, Julian said eventually. Oliver, wasn't it? Louisa stiffened. What about him? Lady Whitmore mentioned he's also in London this summer. Does he know about the chess? God, no. Oliver is... She searched for words. He's a good man. Loves me, wants what's best for me. But he's also conventional to his bones. He'd see this as shameful, dangerous. He'd try to stop me to protect me. From what? Excellence? From scandal. From choices he believes will harm me. She moved a chess piece absently. He means well. They all mean well. My father, my brother, even my aunt in her way. They want me safe and settled and proper. They don't understand that their vision of safety feels like suffocation. What do you want? Julian asked quietly. If you could have anything, complete freedom to choose your life, what would you want? The question pierced something deep. Louisa stared at the board, thinking, I want to play chess, not just in secret, but openly. I want to be respected for my mind instead of diminished because of my sex. I want conversations that challenge me, not vapid pleasantries about weather and needlework. She looked up, meeting his eyes. I want to wake up every day and feel fully alive, not half dead from pretending. Then that's what you should have. Julian, be realistic. Women like me don't get those things. We get marriages if we're lucky, loneliness if we're not, and spinsterhood if we refuse both. What if there was another option? Her heart kicked. What option? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What if you could keep playing? What if someone with enough influence ensured you had a place in the chess world regardless of your sex? Someone like a duke, you mean? Exactly like a duke. His expression was serious, intent. I have power, Louisa. More than I often know what to do with. If I declared you under my patronage, sponsored your participation in tournaments, it would look like I was your mistress. The words fell between them like stones. Julian's jaw worked. I won't lie and say there wouldn't be talk. There would be. Vicious, ugly talk. Then why suggest it? Because the alternative is watching you dim your light to survive, and I... He stopped, something raw crossing his face. I can't stomach that. Not when there's another way. A way that destroys my reputation and makes me dependent on your favor. No, thank you. She stood, pacing to the window. I appreciate the thought, Julian. Truly. But I won't trade one cage for another, no matter how gilded. Silence. Then his footsteps coming up behind her. You're right, he said quietly. I'm sorry. That was thoughtless of me. It was kind of you. Misguided, but kind. She turned to face him. This is why it can't be more than this week. You're a duke. You think in terms of power and patronage and protection. I'm just trying to survive with my autonomy intact. You're not just anything, Louisa. His voice was low, intense. You're extraordinary, and you deserve a world that recognizes that without requiring you to become someone's possession in exchange. The words lodged in her throat like tears. That world doesn't exist. Then perhaps we should create it. Julian, I know. 1 week. No strings. No futures. His hand lifted, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. But for this week, let me imagine better. Let me pretend we could build something where you're free, and I'm worthy of you. You don't need to be worthy of me. You're a duke. And you're the woman who beat me at chess and made me question everything I thought I knew about intelligence, courage, and what matters. His thumb traced her jaw. Title means nothing compared to that. She should step back, should remember all the reasons this was impossible. Instead, she swayed forward, closing the distance between them. This is a mistake, she whispered. Probably. His breath ghosted across her lips. Are you going to stop me? I should, but will you? She answered by rising on her toes and kissing him. It was soft at first, tentative, testing. Then his arms came around her, and the gentleness shattered into something desperate and consuming. He kissed like he played chess, strategic, focused, devastating. When they finally pulled away, both unsteady, Louisa's head was spinning. Still a mistake? Julian asked roughly. Absolutely. But she was smiling, though perhaps a worthwhile one. I'll accept that compromise. He rested his forehead against hers. We should probably talk about what this means. It means we have 4 more days of the tournament, 4 more days where we can be honest with each other. And then we go back to reality. Yes. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. I don't like that plan. Neither do I. But it's the only one that doesn't end in disaster. There's something you should know. His expression turned serious. I wasn't entirely honest earlier. When I said I came here to play chess, that's not the only reason. Her stomach tightened. What do you mean? My father died 6 months ago. I inherited the title, the estates, the responsibilities, and along with them the expectations. He moved to the window, shoulders tense. Every mother with a marriageable daughter has been throwing her at me since the funeral. Every fortune hunter, every social climber. They see a young duke, and they smell opportunity. That must be exhausting. It's suffocating. I came here to escape it, to have 1 week where I was just Julian, playing chess, free from the marriage market. He laughed bitterly. And then I met you, and suddenly freedom felt like the loneliest thing in the world. Louisa's throat ached. What are you saying? I'm saying I understand why you want autonomy, why you fear becoming someone's possession, because I'm living the flip side of that, being the possession everyone wants to claim. He turned back to her. And I'm saying that what we have, these stolen moments where we're both just ourselves, it's the realest thing I've felt in months. She crossed to him, taking his hand. Then let's not waste it on what we can't have. Let's just be here, fully present, for these 4 days. And after we'll survive. We're both good at that. He pulled her close, and she let herself lean into his strength. Just for a moment. Just while they could pretend the world didn't exist beyond this room. Teach me something, he said finally. Show me that brilliant mind at work. So she did. They played chess until the candles burned low, and between moves she taught him to see patterns he'd never noticed, to think probabilistically, to anticipate not just the next move, but the cascade of consequences that followed. And if their hands touched more than necessary, if their eyes held longer than proper, well, they had 4 more days to be reckless. After that, they'd be sensible. The next 2 days passed in a blur of chess matches, whispered conversations, and mounting tension. Craven avoided Louisa entirely, but his allies began circling, making pointed comments, spreading rumors about her relationship with the Duke. She's using her feminine wiles, Louisa overheard Lord Carlisle say, distracting his grace from his matches. Julian had actually laughed at that. If she's distracting me, it's by being a better player than anyone else here. My performance has improved since studying her strategies. But the damage was done. The other men watched them with speculation and resentment. The fiction of Eliza Marsh was fracturing under scrutiny. On the 4th day, Louisa faced off against a quiet baron who'd always been respectful, even in defeat. They played a solid technical game. No theatrics, no crowd. Midway through, the baron leaned forward. You should withdraw, he said quietly. Before this gets worse. Louisa's hand paused over her knight. I beg your pardon. Craven's been talking, building alliances. He's convinced several men that your presence here is inappropriate, that Lord Stirling's patronage and the Duke's protection are evidence of moral corruption. The baron's expression was pained. I don't agree. But I wanted you to know. There's a faction forming. They want you banned from future tournaments. Her blood ran cold. They can't do that. They can if enough powerful men agree, and Craven's very persuasive when he wants to be. The baron moved his rook. I'm telling you this as a kindness. Whatever scandal you're courting with Gravenmore, it's not worth losing your place here. Louisa felt her world tilting. This was supposed to be safe, her one refuge, and now they were trying to take it away because she dared to be good at it. Thank you for the warning, she managed. But I won't withdraw. Then be careful, very careful. Men like Craven don't stop at poisoning. They destroy reputations, livelihoods, futures, and you... He gestured vaguely. You're vulnerable in ways the Duke isn't. She won the match, but the victory tasted like ash. That evening she told Julian everything. His fury was immediate and volcanic. They're going to ruin you for being better than them, for making them look foolish, for existing in their space. He paced Lady Whitmore's sitting room like a caged wolf. I'll go to Carlisle. I'll threaten to withdraw my patronage from the entire tournament if they even think about... That will only make it worse, Louisa interrupted. They'll see it as proof that I'm using you, that I'm corrupt. I don't care what they think, but I do. She caught his arm, stopping his pacing. Julian, my reputation is all I have. If I lose that, I lose everything, not just chess, but any hope of a decent future. Then marry me. The words hung in the air like a grenade. Louisa stared at him, certain she'd misheard. What? Marry me. If you're my Duchess, they can't touch you. They can't ban you or ruin you or... Stop! She stepped back, shaking. You can't mean that. I'm completely serious. You're being ridiculous. We've known each other 4 days. You don't marry someone after 4 days. People marry for far worse reasons than genuine admiration and intellectual compatibility. He closed the distance between them. Louisa, I care about you, I respect you, I want you safe. If marriage accomplishes that, marriage accomplishes making me your property, making every victory mine become yours by extension, making me lose myself entirely. Her voice cracked. Is that what you want? I want you protected. I want to be free. The words exploded out of her. Don't you understand? Marriage is the cage I've been running from. It doesn't matter if the cage is gilded or if my captor is kind. It's still imprisonment. Julian recoiled as if she'd struck him. That's what you think I'm offering? A cage? Isn't it? You're a duke, Julian. Even if you mean well, even if you genuinely care, you have power over me in every way that matters. As your wife, I'd be yours, legally, socially, completely. And maybe you'd let me play chess, maybe you'd encourage it, but it would always be your permission, your allowance, your grace. I would never, you wouldn't mean to, but it would happen anyway because that's how the world works. Tears burned her eyes. I don't want your protection if it costs my autonomy. I'd rather face whatever Craven throws at me and survive on my own terms. Silence fell between them, heavy and aching. I'm sorry, Julian said finally, his voice rough. You're right. I wasn't thinking about what you need, only about fixing the problem. As if you're a problem to be fixed rather than a person with agency. I know you meant well. Meaning well isn't enough. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. So what do we do? How do I help without taking away your choices? She thought about it, her mind racing through strategies and consequences. We finish the tournament. We identify Craven's allies and undermine their coalition. We make it clear that banning me would mean losing significant patronage, not just yours, but Lord Sterling's, potentially others. She straightened her shoulders. And we let the chess speak for itself. If I keep winning, keep proving my worth, they can't dismiss me as easily. And if they ban you anyway, then I find another way, another tournament, another opportunity. I'm good at surviving, Julian. I've been doing it my whole life. He looked at her with something like awe. So you're extraordinary. I'm stubborn, there's a difference. No, you're extraordinary. He crossed to her, taking her hands. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry I tried to solve this with power instead of partnership. Tell me what you need from me. Keep being you, keep watching my back, keep teaching me that not all powerful men are threats. She squeezed his fingers. And when this is over, let me go without making me feel guilty for choosing freedom. Pain flickered across his face. You're really going to walk away at the end of this? We both agreed. I know what we agreed doesn't make it easier. He pulled her close, and she let herself melt into his embrace. 4 days ago, I thought I wanted freedom. Now I think I just wanted you. Her eyes burned. Don't say things like that. Why not? It's true. Because it makes everything harder. She pulled back to look at him. Julian, we can't do this. We can't build something real in 5 days and expect it to survive the world beyond here. Why not? Because you're a duke who needs to marry well and produce heirs, and I'm a woman who wants to play chess and choose her own life. Those things don't coexist. They could if we let them. No, they can't. She stepped out of his arms, wrapping herself in resolve. We have 1 more day of matches. Let's focus on that. On keeping me safe and winning. We can face the rest when it comes. He looked like he wanted to argue. Instead, he nodded slowly. 1 more day, then the final matches. Then the final matches, she agreed. Neither of them mentioned what came after. The tournament's final day arrived with sharp, brilliant sunshine. Louisa woke with her stomach in knots, knowing she faced her most important matches yet. But first, she had to implement her plan. She found Lord Sterling in the breakfast room, looking grim. I heard, he said without preamble. Craven's coalition. They're planning to present a formal petition to Carlisle after the final matches, requesting your ban from future tournaments. How many signatures? 7 so far. They need 10 to force Carlisle's hand. Then we have to ensure they don't get 10. Louisa sat across from him, her mind working through angles. Who's wavering? Who might be convinced to refuse signing? They spent an hour strategizing, identifying targets. Lord Sterling would speak to some. Lady Cassandra would charm others. Julian would deploy the subtle threat of a duke's disapproval. It was manipulation, pure and simple. Louisa hated it. But she hated the alternative more. The morning matches went by in a blur. She won 2, drawing a third when her opponent played defensively. By afternoon, only 4 players remained in contention for the tournament's top honours: herself, Julian, Craven, and a young Viscount who'd surprised everyone with his strategic prowess. The semi-finals would determine the final match. Louisa drew the Viscount. Julian drew Craven. She could barely focus on her own match, too aware of the battle happening across the room. Julian and Craven faced each other like generals at war, every move weighted with history and hatred. "Your move, Miss Marsh." She jolted back to her own board. The Viscount watched her with concerned eyes. "Forgive me," she murmured, making her move. Distracted. "Understandable. That match." He nodded toward Julian and Craven. "Feels like it's about more than chess." "It is." She forced herself to concentrate, to play the board in front of her, instead of watching the drama unfold elsewhere. The Viscount was good. Better than she'd anticipated. He'd learned from watching her, adapted his strategies. It took her 40 moves to secure victory. When she did, she immediately looked toward the other match. Julian and Craven were locked in what looked like a death match, both their faces tight with concentration and fury. The room had gone silent, everyone watching. Craven moved his queen, an aggressive play that opened his defense. Julian stared at the board, jaw working. Then he moved his rook. "Check." Craven's eyes widened. He studied the board frantically, looking for escape. There was none. "Checkmate," Julian said quietly. The room erupted. Lord Sterling's booming laugh cut through the noise. Lady Cassandra applauded elegantly, and Craven sat frozen, staring at the board, as if he couldn't quite believe what had happened. "Well played, Your Grace," he said finally, voice strangled. Julian didn't respond. He simply stood and walked directly to Louisa, his expression blazing with triumph and relief. "We're in the finals," he said. "You and me." Her stomach dropped. "What?" "Tomorrow. Final match of the tournament. You. Against me." His smile was fierce. "Winner takes all." Around them, excited chatter rose. The finest player in the tournament against the Duke. A governess's daughter against nobility. The woman who'd nearly been poisoned against the man who'd protected her. It was perfect drama, perfect tension. And Louisa suddenly knew exactly what she had to do. That night she lay awake for hours, her plan crystallizing into certainty. She'd lose on purpose, not obviously. That would insult Julian and raise suspicion, but carefully, subtly, making choices that gave him openings, letting him win by narrow margins so it looked like a genuine defeat. She had to lose because winning would make everything worse. Craven's coalition would point to her victory as proof that she was a threat, an aberration, something that needed to be eliminated. But if she lost, especially to a duke, especially to Julian, she'd validate the natural order. She'd lose gracefully, prove she knew her place, become safe again. And maybe, just maybe, they'd let her come back next year. The plan tasted like poison in her mouth. But survival always did. She didn't tell Julian. Couldn't tell him. He'd argue, try to change her mind, maybe even threaten to throw the match himself. No. This had to be her choice. Her sacrifice. The next morning she dressed carefully in her simplest dress. Eliza Marsh one final time, proper and grateful and unthreatening. Julian found her before the match, pulling her aside into a quiet corner. "Are you ready?" he asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Good, because I'm not going to go easy on you." His smile was competitive, warm. "I want to beat you at your best. No mercy. I wouldn't expect anything less." The lie tasted like copper. He kissed her then, quick and sweet and devastating. "Win or lose, Louisa, this has been the most alive I've felt in years. Thank you for that." Her throat closed. "Julian." "I know, 1 week, no promises." He squeezed her hand. "But that doesn't make it less true." Then they were walking into the main hall and it was too late to say anything else. The crowd was enormous. Word had spread about the final match, and it seemed every member of the club who could attend had shown up. Lord Carlisle presided over the arrangement with barely contained excitement. "Gentlemen," he announced, though his eyes were on Louisa, "and Miss Marsh, welcome to the final match of this year's tournament, the Duke of Gravenmore against our most unusual competitor. May the best player win." They took their seats. The familiar ritual of arranging pieces, choosing colours. Julian won the draw for white, giving him first move. "Good luck," he said quietly. "You too," she whispered. And the match began. For the first dozen moves, Louisa played her best. She couldn't help it. Muscle memory, instinct, the pure joy of the game taking over. She and Julian traded pieces, maneuvered for position, tested each other's defences. The crowd watched in breathless silence. Then at move 15, Louisa made her choice. She moved her bishop, a defensive position when she should have attacked. It left her vulnerable to Julian's knight, sacrificing control of the centre board. Julian frowned, studying the move. He had to see it was wrong, had to recognize she could have done better. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "Quite sure." He moved his knight, capitalizing on her mistake. And just like that, the momentum shifted. Over the next 20 moves, Louisa slowly, carefully, allowed Julian to dismantle her position. Nothing obvious. Each mistake looked plausible, like a miscalculation or an overlooked consequence. But together, they added up to inevitable defeat. She could see the confusion in Julian's eyes. Could see him trying to understand why she was playing beneath herself, but he kept playing to win, just as she'd known he would. At move 42, Louisa moved her queen into a position that left her king exposed. Julian studied the board, his expression tight. "Louisa," he murmured, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "What are you doing?" "Playing chess, Your Grace." "No. You're letting me win." Her pulse hammered. "I'm simply playing. If you see a winning move, I suggest you take it." He stared at her for a long moment. She held his gaze, silently begging him to understand, to let her do this. Finally, he moved his rook. "Check." 3 moves later. "Checkmate." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Lord Carlisle's voice boomed congratulations. Men clapped Julian on the shoulder, celebrating the return of natural order, a duke triumphing over a woman who'd gotten above herself. Louisa stood, curtsied gracefully. "Well played, Your Grace. You were the better player today." Julian's face was a mask, unreadable, but his eyes burned with something like betrayal. "Thank you, Miss Marsh. You played admirably." She fled before he could say anything else, before the crowd could trap her in their celebration. Lady Cassandra followed, catching up in the corridor. "What did you do?" the older woman demanded. "What I had to. You threw the match. You let him win." "I ensured my survival." Louisa's voice cracked. "Craven's petition, the coalition. If I'd won, Lady Cassandra, they'd destroy me. But this way you've destroyed yourself differently." Lady Cassandra grabbed her shoulders. "That man cares for you. And you just lied to him in the most fundamental way possible. He'll forgive me eventually, once he understands why. Will he? Or will he see it as proof that you don't trust him to protect you, that you'd rather sacrifice your integrity than accept his help?" Louisa's knees buckled. Lady Cassandra caught her, guiding her to a bench. "I did what I thought was right," Louisa whispered. "I know, darling. But sometimes doing what we think is right is just another way of being afraid." Louisa sat there, shaking, while the applause continued in the hall beyond. She'd saved her reputation, secured her future at the tournaments, so why did it feel like she'd lost everything that mattered? She avoided Julian for the rest of the day. It wasn't hard. He was occupied with victory celebrations, formal dinners, speeches, and she was just Eliza Marsh again, invisible at the margins. That evening, as she packed her things for departure the next morning, someone knocked on her door. Lord Stirling stood in the corridor, his expression grave. "We need to talk," he said. "Your brother is here." Her blood turned to ice. "What?" "Oliver Thorne arrived an hour ago. He's heard rumours about a woman matching your description playing in a men's tournament. He's furious, demanding explanations." Lord Stirling's face was sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Louisa. I tried to intercept him, but he insisted on seeing his sister immediately." This was it, the disaster she'd always feared. Discovery, scandal, the end of everything. Where is he? Lady Whitmore's sitting room. I've kept him contained there, but he's not patient and... Lord Stirling hesitated. The Duke is with him. Gravenmore insisted. Of course he did. Even angry, even betrayed, Julian was still trying to protect her. Louisa smoothed her skirts, lifted her chin. Whatever came next, she'd face it directly. She walked into the sitting room to find Oliver pacing like a trapped animal, Julian standing near the window with crossed arms, and Lady Cassandra perched in a chair with her usual unflappable composure. "Oliver," Louisa said quietly. Her brother spun toward her. He was 26, responsible and conventional, and convinced he knew what was best for everyone. Right now, he looked ready to explode. "Louisa, tell me it isn't true." "What isn't true?" "That you've been playing chess in a men's tournament, under a false name for years." Each word was bitten off sharply. "Tell me the rumors I heard are vicious lies." She met his eyes. "I can't tell you that." Oliver's face went white. "My God, you really... How could you? Do you have any idea what this means? The scandal, if anyone discovers? Father would be devastated. Our family's name would survive," she interrupted, "the same way it survives everything else. You don't understand what you've done, what you've risked. For what? For chess." He said it like it was the most ridiculous thing imaginable. "For myself," she said quietly. "For the chance to be more than ornamental. To use the mind God gave me for something that matters. Playing games matters. It matters to me." Oliver looked at Lady Cassandra. "You enabled this. You convinced her." "I showed her an alternative," Lady Cassandra said calmly. "She made her own choices. She's ruined. If anyone discovers..." "No one will discover," Julian interjected, his voice cold, "because everyone here will protect Miss Thorne's identity. I'll ensure it personally." Oliver turned on him. "And who are you to make such promises?" "The Duke of Gravenmore. And someone who respects your sister's intelligence far more than you apparently do." The title made Oliver pause, but only for a moment. "With respect, Your Grace, this is a family matter. My sister's reputation, her future, these are my responsibility." "Your responsibility is to support her choices, not control them," Julian shot back. "She's brilliant, exceptional, and you're trying to crush that because it makes you uncomfortable. I'm trying to protect her from herself, by telling her she's only valuable if she's silent and obedient, by treating her mind as something shameful." Julian moved closer, his presence commanding. "Your sister beat me at chess. She beat nearly every man here. She's the finest player I've seen in years, and your response is to be embarrassed rather than proud?" Oliver's jaw worked. "You don't understand how society functions, Your Grace. Women who step out of their sphere, they're destroyed. I'm trying to prevent that destruction by destroying her yourself, just more slowly." Julian's voice was sharp as glass. "By telling her the price of safety is never being fully human." "That's not... I'm not..." Oliver looked at Louisa, something desperate in his eyes. "Tell him. Tell him I only want what's best for you." "I know you do," Louisa said softly. "But Oliver, what you think is best and what I need aren't the same thing. So you'll choose chess over family, over your reputation, over any hope of a decent marriage?" "I'll choose myself. For once in my life, I'll choose being fully alive over being safely dead." Silence fell, heavy and aching. Oliver looked between her and Julian, something shifting in his expression. "There's more here than chess," he said slowly. "Isn't there? You and the Duke are none of your concern," Julian said firmly. "Your sister's personal life is her own. Not when it affects the family name, not when..." Oliver stopped, his face hardening. "You need to come home now, before this gets worse, before anyone else discovers what you've been doing." "No, Louisa, no. I won't go home and pretend I'm someone I'm not. I won't apologize for being good at something. And I won't let you or Father or anyone else make me feel ashamed for having a mind and using it." Oliver looked stricken. "I'm not trying to shame you. I'm trying to save you. Then save me by letting me live, by trusting that I can make my own choices and survive their consequences. And what if you can't? What if this destroys you? then it will be my destruction. My choice." She stepped closer to her brother, softening her voice. "Oliver, I love you. I know you're scared, but I need you to trust me, please." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked at Julian. "Your Grace, I need your word, as a gentleman, that you will protect my sister's reputation. That whatever has passed between you, I intend to court her," Julian said simply, "publicly, properly, with the goal of marriage." The words hit Louisa like a physical blow. She spun toward him. "Julian, no. We agreed. We agreed to 1 week without promises. The week is ending. I'm allowed to want more." He held her gaze, his expression fierce and determined. "I'm allowed to fight for you, even if you won't fight for yourself. I don't want... I know what you think you want. Freedom, autonomy, chess, and I'm telling you, you can have all of that. With me, if you'll let yourself consider it." "You're proposing again," she said faintly, "after I threw our match, after I lied to you. I'm proposing because you threw the match, because you thought the only way to survive was to make yourself smaller, and I want to give you a life where you never have to do that again." Oliver looked between them. "Someone explain. What match?" "Today's final. She let me win." Julian's voice was flat. "She played beneath herself to ensure I'd triumph, because she thought beating a duke would make her enemies ban her from future tournaments." "Was she wrong?" Lady Cassandra interjected quietly. "Craven's petition, the coalition, would they have let her play again if she'd won?" Julian's jaw clenched. "No, probably not. Then she made a strategic choice, a sacrifice play, just as you would have in her position. It's different when it's chess. When it's her life..." He stopped, breathing hard. "She shouldn't have to sacrifice herself to exist in this world." "But she does," Oliver said, surprising everyone. "Your Grace, I appreciate your intentions, but courting my sister, even with the best motives, will invite exactly the scandal I'm trying to prevent. People will assume she's your mistress, that she traded favors for your protection. Then they'll be wrong. But the damage will be done regardless." Oliver's expression was pained. "This is what I've been trying to explain. In our world, perception matters more than truth, and the perception of a connection between you would destroy her." Louisa felt the walls closing in. Oliver was right. Julian was right. They were both trying to protect her in their own ways, and both their solutions ended with her losing something essential. "Stop," she said quietly. "All of you. Stop trying to solve me like I'm a problem." Everyone turned toward her. "I appreciate that you care. All of you. But I'm not a chess piece to be positioned for maximum advantage. I'm a person, and I get to choose my own moves." She looked at Oliver. "I'm not going home. Not yet. I have 1 more day here, and I intend to use it." "For what?" "To finish this properly, to say goodbye to Lady Cassandra and Lord Stirling, to collect my thoughts." She turned to Julian. "And to tell you, clearly and without audience, what I want. What I actually want, not what anyone else thinks I should want." Julian's expression was unreadable. "When?" "Tonight, after everyone else has gone to bed. Meet me in the library, alone." He nodded slowly. "As you wish." She looked at Oliver. "I'll come home tomorrow. We'll talk to Father together. We'll figure out how to manage this, but tonight I need to end this my own way." Her brother's shoulders sagged. "You've changed. In just 1 summer, you've become someone I barely recognize." "No," she said softly. "I've become someone I've always been. You're just seeing her for the first time." That night, Louisa waited in the library until the house went quiet. When Julian finally appeared, he looked exhausted, still in his formal clothes from dinner, but with his cravat loosened and hair disheveled from running his hands through it. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." He closed the door behind him, leaning against it. "Hell of a day. That's one way to describe it." They stood there, an ocean of space between them, everything unsaid hovering in the air like smoke. "You threw the match," Julian said finally. "I did." "Why?" "Because winning would have cost me everything, and losing only cost me pride. It cost you more than that. It cost you honesty. Between us." She flinched. "I know. I'm sorry. I should have told you my plan. Should have trusted you to understand. Her voice broke. I was scared. And when I'm scared, I try to control what I can. Even if it means controlling other people's perceptions of you, their choices. Yes, even then. She moved closer, needing him to understand. Julian, I've spent my whole life being controlled. By my father, by society, by the rules that say women like me aren't allowed to want things. The one area I can control is chess. And I used it, badly. I used you, to manipulate an outcome I thought I needed. You didn't need to manipulate anything. I would have helped you. By proposing marriage, by making me your responsibility, by making us partners. He pushed off the door, closing the distance. Louisa, when I proposed, both times, I wasn't trying to cage you. I was trying to offer you protection that came with freedom. But I'm realizing now that I didn't ask what you actually wanted. I assumed. What do you want? She asked. Really? Strip away the titles and expectations. What does Julian want? He exhaled slowly. You. In whatever form you'll let me have you. As a friend, as a chess partner, He stopped. As something more if you wanted that. But not at the cost of your autonomy. Never that. I want more too, she admitted. I want you. The man who sees me as a person first, who challenges my mind and respects my choices, but I'm terrified of what wanting you means. Why? Because you're a duke. Because even if you mean well, even if you genuinely believe in my freedom, the world doesn't work that way. Your wife would be your property, legally and socially, and tears burned her eyes. I can't survive being property again, even willingly given property. Julian was quiet for a long moment. What if we change the rules? You can't change the law. No, but I can change how we implement it. Settlements that protect your autonomy. Agreements that ensure your choices remain yours. Partnership instead of ownership. He took her hands. I know you don't believe it's possible, but what if we tried? What if we built something different together? And if it doesn't work? If the reality of marriage destroys what we have? Then we'll have tried. We'll have fought for something better instead of accepting what's always been. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists. Louisa, I'm not asking you to decide tonight. I'm asking you to consider it, to believe that another way might exist. She stared up at him. This impossible man who'd crashed into her carefully controlled life and made her want dangerous things. I'm still going home tomorrow. I know. I need time. Space to think without everyone watching, judging. I understand. But, she swallowed hard, I want to see you again, after I've talked to my father, after I've figured out what I'm actually capable of wanting instead of what I think I should want. His expression softened. I'll wait, as long as you need. That's not fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. He leaned down, resting his forehead against hers. You're worth waiting for, Louisa Thorne, even if you don't believe that yet. She kissed him then, desperate and fierce and full of all the things she couldn't say. He responded with matching intensity, pulling her close like he could keep her there through sheer force of will. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I should go, she whispered, before someone finds us and makes Oliver's fears come true. Probably wise. But he didn't let go. Promise me something. What? That you'll keep playing. Whatever happens between us, don't give up chess. Don't make yourself smaller for anyone. I promise. If you promise something in return. Anything. Stop trying to save me. I don't need saving. I just need... She searched for words. Someone who sees me clearly and stays anyway. His smile was soft, almost reverent. I can do that. One more kiss. Gentle this time, sweet and full of possibility. Then Louisa forced herself to step away, to walk out of the library and back to her borrowed room. Behind her she heard Julian whisper, "Good night, Louisa." She didn't look back. 3 months later, the autumn tournament was smaller than the summer one. Fewer players, less spectacle. But it was open to all comers, and Lord Stirling had secured Louisa's invitation under her real name this time. No more hiding, Lady Cassandra had said firmly. You're Louisa Thorne, chess player. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me. The months since summer had been complicated, Oliver had helped her navigate the conversation with their father, awkward, painful, but ultimately productive. Her father hadn't understood, but he'd agreed not to force a marriage. Yet. And Julian had kept his word. He'd written long, thoughtful letters about chess strategy and terrible puns and nothing of substance. He'd visited once, proper and formal, sitting in her father's parlor and discussing politics, while his eyes promised everything they couldn't say aloud. He'd given her space, time, freedom to choose. Now, walking into the club for the autumn tournament, Louisa felt exposed and terrified and more herself than she'd ever been. Julian stood near the entrance, clearly waiting. When he saw her, his face transformed, joy and relief and want all tangled together. "Miss Thorne," he said, formally bowing. "Welcome, Your Grace." She curtsied, fighting a smile. "I hear you've been practicing. I've had an excellent teacher, even if she did let me win our last match. I'm hoping to correct that error today." His grin was wicked. "I'm counting on it." They'd been paired for an early match, tournament organizers clearly hoping for drama. The crowd was smaller but just as intense, watching to see if the woman who'd caused such scandal in summer could hold her own in autumn. Louisa and Julian sat across from each other, arranging pieces. Everything felt both familiar and new, the same ritual but without the lies, without Eliza Marsh, just herself, fully visible. "Ready?" Julian asked. "Absolutely." They played for 2 hours. No distractions, no provocations, just pure strategy and skill. Louisa felt her mind expand, calculating probabilities and seeing patterns. Julian had improved dramatically, pushing her harder than he had in summer. But she was better. At move 63, she moved her queen into final position. Checkmate. The room erupted in applause. Julian stared at the board, then started laughing. Genuine, delighted, free. "There she is," he said. "The real Louisa. Finally playing her best. Finally brave enough to win." She stood, extending her hand. "Well played, Your Grace." He took it, but instead of shaking, he held on. "Have dinner with me, tonight, properly. I want to court you, Louisa, publicly, if you'll let me." Every eye in the room watched them. She could hear the whispers starting, feel the speculation building, and she realized she didn't care. "Yes," she said clearly. "I'd like that very much." His smile could have lit the room. "Thank you." From the corner, Lord Stirling's booming laugh rang out. Lady Cassandra applauded elegantly, and somewhere in the back Louisa heard Oliver's resigned sigh. But she'd made her choice. She'd chosen herself, and the man who wanted her to be fully herself beside him. Everything else would figure itself out. Epilogue. 1 year later, the wedding had been small, intimate, and unconventional in every way that mattered. Louisa had insisted on settlements that protected her property, her choices, her autonomy. Julian's solicitors had been horrified. Julian had been delighted. "Whatever you need," he'd said. "Whatever makes you feel safe." Now, a year into marriage, Louisa sat in their London townhouse's library, a chessboard set up before her. Through the window, she could see the autumn tournament happening across the square. She'd played earlier, won her matches, and now waited for the finals. Julian would face Lord Stirling tonight. The older man had finally convinced Lady Cassandra to marry him, and his chess game had improved exponentially under her tutelage. The door opened. Julian appeared, still in his formal clothes from his semi-final match. "I heard you destroyed Lord Carlisle," he said, settling into the chair across from her. "In 20 moves. He still hasn't forgiven me for existing." "His loss." Julian moved a pawn. "Your game tonight is against the Viscount Ashworth." "He's good." "So am I," she countered. "Will you be there?" "Front row, always." He captured her pawn. "Though I'm hoping you'll come to mine afterward. Stirling's been insufferable since Cassandra started coaching him. I need you there to celebrate my inevitable victory." "So confident." "I learned from the best." They played in comfortable silence, the rhythm familiar after a year of evenings like this. Louisa had kept playing, kept winning. Julian had become her fiercest supporter and most challenging opponent. Marriage hadn't been a cage. It had been an expansion, more freedom, not less, because she'd found someone who made space for her to be fully herself. "I have news," she said quietly. Julian looked up. Good news? Complicated news. Lord Carlisle has agreed to open next summer's tournament to women. Officially. No more false names or special dispensations. His face lit up. That's incredible. You did it. You changed the rules. We did it. Your influence, Sterling's persistence, Cassandra's charm, all of us together. She moved her queen. Check. Damn. He studied the board. You're going to beat me, aren't you? Absolutely. Good. He moved his king, buying time. I've gotten used to losing to you. It's become rather charming. You're a terrible liar. True. I'm competitive, not delusional. He looked at her with warmth. Besides, losing to you means I get to watch you think. That's never a hardship. You're being sentimental. I'm being honest. He reached across the board, taking her hand. Checkmate, she said softly, making her final move. Julian studied the board, then laughed. I didn't even see it coming. You were distracted by sentiment. Guilty as charged. He stood, pulling her up with him. Come here. He wrapped his arms around her. I have a question, a rather important one. Another proposal. We're already married. Not a proposal. His voice turned softer, almost shy. More of a suggestion. About our future. Louisa pulled back to look at him. What kind of suggestion? The kind involving tiny chess players who might inherit your brilliance and my competitive nature. He smiled, a hint of nervousness in his expression. What would you think about an heir, a little Blackwood to terrorize the chess world in a few years? Her heart squeezed. I think that would be the greatest adventure yet. His eyes lit up. Really? Really? Though I reserve the right to keep playing tournaments even while carrying said heir, I wouldn't dream of stopping you. He kissed her forehead. You'll probably beat everyone while 7 months along just to prove you can. Absolutely, she grinned. And we'll teach them chess from birth. No gender restrictions in our house. None whatsoever. He pulled her closer. Boy or girl, they'll be free to be exactly who they are, just like their mother. Louisa felt tears prick her eyes. You're making me sentimental again. Good, I like you sentimental. He kissed her softly. So we're doing this? Building a family? We're doing this. She kissed him back. Now come on. Lady Cassandra is waiting to teach you her new strategy. Your strategy, you mean? My menace, she said fondly, for the rest of our lives. And somehow, that sounded exactly right. In a corner of the club, Lord Sterling and Lady Cassandra watched the couple leave. They're good together, Cassandra said. She challenges him, he sees her. So when are you going to marry me? Sterling asked. Oh, fine. Yes. Sterling froze. What? Yes, I'll marry you, but only if you accept that I'll keep teaching chess to whoever wants to learn. Yes, all of that, absolutely yes. He looked stunned. Really, after 12 years? You've proven you love me for who I am. You changed that girl's life. And Louisa showed me that partnership doesn't mean losing autonomy. It means finding the right partner. Sterling's grin could have lit London. I'm going to make you so happy. You already do, you ridiculous man. Sometimes the best victories aren't on the board at all. The end. Thank you for staying until the end of Louisa and Julian's story. If you loved watching Louisa choose herself and still find love, you're exactly why these stories exist. If this resonated with you, please like this video. Drop a comment sharing your favorite moment and subscribe for more stories about women who refuse to play by rules that were never made for them. Thank you for being here. You're the reason these stories matter.